All right. Well, my name is, as Chris mentioned, my name is Brandon Shop. I'm Director of Product Management here at SolarWinds, and I focus specifically within our systems management portfolio of products. So up to this point, we've kind of really focused more on the network side of things. And as Denny mentioned at the beginning of the conversation today, SolarWinds has broadened just outside of a network management company to an IT management company. And so with that, we've acquired and we've built technology and products ourselves. And the first one I wanted to talk about today is our server and application monitor product. And so if you're this is another product that's also built on top of, as Chris was talking about earlier, the Orion Platform. And so, originally this started out as, before I got here, I've been here for 4.5 years. And so Denny actually started it up. It was called Application Monitor, and it was focused on, it was aimed more at the network folks, focused on application issues. And since then it's broadened to focus more beyond applications, but also into servers, into a true server management tool. And so over the years, so with this current version, which is in beta right now, SAM 6.0, we're introducing a new concept called we're calling it App Insight. So, and kind of what that is, if we look at things, we're going to focus first with SQL, Microsoft SQL. If you have a Microsoft SQL server, there are tons of different counters that you can get via WMI or other protocols. But what do a lot of those mean, and what are they telling you? How are they helping you solve a problem other than just turning something from green to red? What should I monitor if I'm not what are the key critical components and statistics that I need to monitor in order to really understand the true health of my SQL server? Because you could have multiple databases on there. What is each database doing? How is it impacting the server? How is it relating to other statistics from a performance at the server level and at the OS level? And so that's kind of the genesis behind the thought of App Insight. So we're starting off, as I mentioned, with Microsoft SQL Server, and the plan is to extend into other technologies going forward. But if I actually go ahead here and I'll actually drill down in, I'm a much more visual person personally. All right, and so let me go ahead and scroll over here and make it a little easier to see. But when you're monitoring a SQL server, there's going to be, a key set of things that you want to pay attention to. And having those all within a concise single dashboard is what we're providing and what we're focusing on here with this new inclusion to the product. So, I mean, not just basic things like, what version of SQL it is, but also you can see things here if it's, how it's set up for failover. Is it clustered? Is it mirroring? What is it doing? Are you monitoring that? And what's the health of that other part of the cluster? If it was an Orion, it would be hot linkable, and you could click through to it. But also, what are all the databases that are on your system or within this SQL database? And what's the current status of all these? So you can see status, the database size, the transaction log file size. And I can even do things, in looking at key critical components. But if I scroll over here and up, what are the active alerts that are that I have set up that are against this database currently? What are specific SQL errors that are coming directly out of the SQL error log? So as I look to try to troubleshoot things, correlate things, is there things that are automatically in the SQL error log that I want to pay attention to, that I need to care about? But as you start going down, as I mentioned, there are hundreds of different things that you can monitor from a SQL perspective. What are probably the digestible key things that I need to care about? So, and overlaying those all within a single view. So being able to look at buffer, being able to look at cache, latches and locks, and see those in a single concise view, not just now, but over time, and how it's been trending and viewing over time. So, and we'll talk about here, you'll see some color lines here, and we'll talk about these in a bit. But baselining, and so seeing, is it hitting a warning threat, a warning area or a critical area to where you actually need to start paying attention to it? How many instances has it gotten into the critical area or the warning area? And like I said, I'm letting a little bit of a cat out of the bag on some of the things I'm going to show here in a second. But and I'll talk to you about how instead of just trying to apply just a generalized, not every database is the same as any other database, or not every application is the same as any other application. So it's going to be dependent upon the server hardware, how the application is being used. But if you just look at it from a pure database perspective, it's going to depend on, what other databases are on that SQL server. So having dynamic thresholding and self-learning thresholding is something that we'll talk about here in a second. That's going to be critical to this as well.
So a question and a comment. Comment being, I love that you give me like 37 decimals on the value.
That's a bug.
There. Okay.
Like I said, this is in beta.
Yeah.
So, but you're very.
As long as you're addressing that, we're good.
Well, we're going to go to the pi length. So
okay.
Yeah. We tried to get it a little further, but yeah, it's a known bug in the current beta.
I'd love to know the exact microsecond that it's going. Anyways. Beyond that, does it also start going into like expensive query times and things like that?
You are a perfect straight man. Okay. So, but yeah, nice. I mean,
it's not what you told us yesterday.
That was in the limo only. Okay. Yeah.
So if we go through here into other key queries, but we talked about processes and services, memory. But
basically, I want to play the blame game. Who is sucking up all the query time?
Exactly. But as we continue to go down. Sessions, active sessions, you can see all these various things that we're using. Another key thing I'll come back to, but is who are the active users? Okay. They're actually using this database. But to your point, top 10 expensive queries by CPU time. So this is specific to the SQL database. So in a second here, I'll drill into a specific database. You can see the top 10 expensive queries by that database.
Sure.
So being able...
Who's the idiot developer who wrote this?
That's the first one on there with the username that initiated it, right?
And so here, and I can expand that out and see the exact query that's being run. And so you can see this within here, but also another key thing people will definitely want to keep an eye on is the SQL agent job status, if that's having problems. But if we go back up to another key component,
unnecessary joins
is top 10 database by active user connection. So who's connected to the database? How long are they connected? Are they idle? How long have they been idle? And things along those lines. Being able to see this at a database level within a SQL server is extremely critical and important as well. But so this is kind of just at the SQL server level. So, up above here, some other things here you can see over time how they match up. But if I go into a given specific database here, so I'll go into.
Did you have page life expectancy on your list of fun little?
I have paging in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but if you go actually now into a given database, you're going to see things, that are, database size by file, by length, the transactions. What's the I/O like? So Chris was definitely talking about I/O with NetFlow earlier. That's obviously very important to watch from a database perspective. Is it thrashing the database? What's the I/O of that database? But also, looking at the from a storage perspective, looking at the total size, the connections, and as we continue to go down, we'll see clusters by fragmentation, non-clusters, indexes by fragmentation.
Okay.
And at the same level here, I don't have any, but the same at the specific database level, not just within the SQL server, but within the given database, what are the top 10 expensive queries within that given database?
So with the little widgets that you have with the green circles, does that mean they're online or they're healthy? What's green?
That means it's healthy. We're currently, it means it's healthy currently.
And like stoplight, yellow means it's performing poorly or that I don't have data on it?
Well, the stoplight, it's going to, obviously it's, not obviously, but
I just
red,
wonder
yellow,
if it's
green.
Trending like the performance of it or just can I talk to it or am I getting that data?
So here it's more focused on, I can drill into any of these given ones, but.
Okay. So I like the idea it just catches your I/O, it's red, it's bad.
Yep. But going in here and see by, then you can chart over time. So that's just the current snapshot in time, is it healthy or not?
Sure.
So then I can come in, drill in here, and see over a given point in time. I want to look a little closer at this. I can go ahead and select and drag and drill in.
Oh, that's sure.
And be able to see that, or, do things down here.
Do you have any spark lines? I know Steven loves those.
I'm liking those.
Yeah. It's pretty sharp, yeah.
So, so you can see in there the current data point value. So, and then obviously is drill in. But if I back up here a second, even if you look at things, like I was saying, overlaying the data so you can see, what are within the, for example, in this specific example, within the log section, for each of these values that I'm monitoring at this specific given point in time, what is the value for each one? And so being able to kind of line those up and see them within a single chart, but also being able to align that to then, if you look at just from the bigger picture, you look at from an OS perspective, from a server perspective, from a virtualization perspective,
Sure.
and kind of seeing how, even for a given application, how all the different components map to it and rely upon it, and how are they performing. So if I see a spike in I/O, is it just because there's a backup potentially going on at 2 a.m., or is there something going on within the server itself? Is it something within the network? It can help you further pinpoint those.
What about the security, like who's the DB owner, what database roles are on there? Does it suck in any of that data? Or is it just performance?
So we're focused primarily on performance.
Okay. I'm just thinking like the questions that usually come up when we're dealing with a client or myself with a database.
Gotcha.
It's usually, all right, what's the security settings on the database or the actual instance?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going down into the actual security settings right now, I don't believe.
Okay.
I'll double check, but I don't believe we are.
Would be cool.
It would.
Just saying.
No, it's good feedback. So, I mean, this is, as I said, this is something that's still in beta too. So, we've
of course.
Chris showed the mock-ups. We've gone through that stage with some customers, and now we're actually having customers put this in their environment and seeing how it works against their environment. So,
You think about it, whenever we're dealing with performance, it's either who has access to get in there and mess it up, or I need to do some work on it. Let me make sure that this instance can handle it, and then let me make sure that the Surface account or the SQL account, whatever it's going to be, can access it. So just thinking it kind of eliminates some extra steps of opening up SQL Management Studio.
good feedback.
There's a question from the internet, and I think I just saw the answer for it, but
The internet has all the answers.
and it has all the questions. Sometimes they match up, but it looks like you can take some of these items and put them onto separate tabs, so you don't have to scroll through everything for what's important to you.
For sure. You can add your own tab, and then we also have a dedicated queries tab, which will allow you to go in here and, because obviously, I mean, as you mentioned,
nice.
the expensive queries is definitely a key critical component.
Just leave that up all the time.
And so, but being able to view it from a given database or given database instance perspective.
Yeah, it's the wall of shame. That's what it is.
Who wrote this? It needs a cone.
That's exactly what it is.
So you can see by host, you can see by database, you can see by login. So you can kind of pivot on that data for the expensive queries. But to answer the specific question from the internet, you can add your own tab in here and then put whatever resources you would like on those. So, each of those given boxes basically are what we call resources. So the answer is yes.
Is that a per user dashboard setting, that tab?
It can be made.
Okay, that's even cooler.
So, so if we go back to here to queries, so at a kind of, now you saw kind of some of the other stuff that I was showing, and let's talk a little bit more about that. But with the baselining and thresholding, so let me go ahead here and so on. We have an HTTP form login component monitor, so being able to do a form login and time that. So if I go into here and I go ahead and specify, let's see. Oh, no, wrong button. I'm not used to this, all the scrolling back and forth. All right. Let me scroll down here a bit. So, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter whether it's SQL or, in this specific instance, just a simple HTTP form monitor, or you're monitoring, Exchange, or monitoring, whatever it may be that you're monitoring from an application perspective. There could be from server to server, from application to application. There could be what you perceive as different thresholds for where you want to go into warning and error. So you can't just apply a blanket, at 60%, I'm going to go ahead and set it as warning it. At 80%, I'm going to go ahead and set it as critical. So, some machines or some component monitors may have different activity than others. So How about something that kind of self-learns itself over time? So basically setting up here, so we can go ahead and baseline data based upon the threshold calculations for a certain period of days. How has it been performing over time? Are there anomalies or are there irregularities? And if so, then let's go ahead and set up the thresholds based on that. So if I go in here and actually override, and go ahead and specify, let me go ahead and let me see the latest baseline details. So now what I see here is for the latest, we can view it by occurrences or metrics over time, and then you can view it by time of day. So if I hover over here, you'll see for work days, and this is for evenings and weekends, so we can see how these metrics have been at different times, point in the day. But you can see same thing by time, what's been the minimum, what's been the maximum, what's been the mean, and the standard deviations away. And so based upon that, and based upon the occurrences that this has occurred, so I can come in here and see, and for Steven, I'll go ahead and drill in again here, but you can go in here and see how many occurrences this has occurred, and we'll auto-define and auto-set the critical thresholds and the warning thresholds based upon how this has been performing over time. How many occurrences have we seen? And obviously you can come in here and you can override it. So I want to say, by default we'll set it warning for 2 standard deviations above and critical for 3 standard deviations above. Maybe you prefer, for this specific component monitor, this is a critical web application, I actually want to set it to 1 standard deviation above. So like I was saying, not everything's created equally from a monitoring perspective. So let's just say here, I want to go ahead and I want to set this as the warning. You can't see it here, but it's actually yellow on my screen. And let's set this as critical. And I'm going to go ahead and apply thresholds, but I'll say use recommended thresholds, which is going to use the default ones. But and I can apply those, and now anytime when I'm setting up alerts, it says alert me when this goes into warning, alert me when this goes into critical. You can have it based, kind of self-learning based upon how the application or the specific component monitor has been monitoring over time. So I can also look at this by probably a more traditional way that people are used to seeing the data is by the actual metric over time, like the charts that we were seeing when we were looking at the we're looking at the database stuff with SQL. You're used to kind of seeing it up and down over time. It's going to vary, it's going to regulate instead of occurrences. And so you can view it by metrics over time and then go in here based upon that and see the same type of view and specify for this given HTTP component monitor what I want the warning and critical thresholds to be. Or like I said, after a specific period of time, after we've had enough time to baseline, we'll auto set it for you. Or you can go in there and say, you know what, I don't want you to learn yourself. I'm going to go ahead and just, I want to set these values to what I want them to be. Sure. Mm-hmm. So you have that flexibility, but this gives, I think the comment was made earlier is, the management application or the monitoring application should take care of itself. You want to focus on the problems that you need to do from a day-to-day aspect and not on the monitoring application. So if we can go in there, we can start monitoring your critical servers, your critical applications, and based upon the behavior of that given application or given component monitor that's already there, auto-apply thresholds, your alerts start firing, then you can focus on what you need to focus on. So, so these are 2 pretty big things that we're coming out with within SAM, our Server and Application Monitor 6.0. A couple other cool little things. I'll briefly mention them. I won't go too deep into them, but
can I ask?
Of course.
A question. Everything we're looking at here, is there any Flash or Java involved?
No.
I'm
not sure what they're using.
For what?
Silverlight?
For a lot of the stuff.
That's just as bad as Java.
No Silverlight, sorry.
Throw things on Silverlight.
No Silverlight, I'm sorry.
It's all HTML and JavaScript.
Yeah.
So it'll run anywhere?
Yes.
He just wants to know if it'll run on fruit.
Yeah,
yes, it's not.
Run on an iPad.
Yeah, it's not Flash. It's not Silverlight. So
now we've made an effort actually to stay away from Flash on Orion. We've been tempted multiple times in the past, and every time we've been able to kind of get it done without it.
Are there any plans to overhaul the interface at all? Make it a little more modern?
And do you have any specific examples are you thinking of? I mean, we've been doing some.
You're not referring to the user interface now called modern, that used to be called Metro, right?
They could put the word data under the logo.
No.
Well,
Well,
I mean, we have been doing
For
things
7
already.
years.
Like we've been updating the charting library. You can see, for example.
no, I've seen the charts
Yep.
going, but the interface, like I created a knock dashboard that sits in our operations, and the whole page refreshes. The charts aren't dynamic.
So on that, basically, the way it works is that right now the problem is that we have views that have resources that can refresh independently of each other, but as long as you have one of those resources that refresh, with the page, you still need to have the view refresh, complete page refresh. As we are moving forward, you're going to see more and more of those resources moving to our more, kind of Ajax, update. And basically, once we get to a point where most of those are, converted, then we will have, basically pages that don't refresh all at once anymore.
Okay. And is it going to move to maybe something a little more fluid instead of the 1, 2, or 3 column?
Yes.
Maybe I want something that spans all 3, and then.
Yeah, we've definitely been looking at those with some of the reporting that we've been working on for Orion in general. You'll see some of the things that we're thinking about there. That's currently, is that currently in beta or not yet?
Yeah, it's in beta.
Okay. So, but definitely we are looking at that to, things like drag and drop and, better organization of columns and like you said, the different resources spanning multiple columns, things along those lines. For sure, those are things that we've been looking at for a little while, just to see directionally how we want to take the specifically here the Orion platform. But if you have other examples, of things that you would like to see, I mean, definitely love to hear those.
Custom CSS.
Okay.
Because we do have displays that are in client-facing areas, and putting the IT branding on it, the Institute branding on it, would be a little better than the gold bar with the black top, and it would just look better.
Are you talking about the header?
Yeah,
I mean, that can be changed today.
Just the boxiness of it.
Gotcha.
Any kind of
Some softening of it and rounding. Yeah. Okay. So a couple other, we're coming up here on time, so I want to plug in the last couple things here. But in recent versions, we've added things like the real-time process explorer, the ability to remotely start monitoring or stop and start services and restart them. In this version, we're adding a real-time event viewer, so you can view the event log of that box from the web console. And we're also adding in asset management, so which in itself, a lot of products do asset management, but it's also warranty for Dell, HP, and IBM. We'll be able to pull the information out. We'll go and look at the individual website for the vendor and tell you if that's in warranty or not. So if I actually go back to the SAM summary here, I can see servers that already have expired warranty, and when they expired, I can also see within the next 90 days which servers I have that are coming up to be expired and how many days left, and the next 5 warranties to expire. So I can go ahead here, and if I want to learn more about this HP Blade.
So why is an expired piece of equipment still green? Just because the health of the object is green?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, since that's more around status, it's focused on the status of the health
Just
of the device.
clarifying, yeah.
Yep.
This is why they rub your arm with alcohol before the lethal injection.
Jeez.
So if I go over here to assets,
Where does that come from?
Way to kill the mood.
so if I go over here to asset inventory, you'll see things like it's things you'd expect to see in an asset. But also here I can go ahead and click on view warranty details, and in this example I'll go out to the HP site and it'll pull up all the details about that. Then I can then use the native tools within the HP or the Dell or the IBM site to go ahead and either renew it or change the level of it or whatever I want to do.
Neat.
So those are, they're still cool features, not as cool as the first 2 I've showed in my opinion, but coming up toward the end I wanted to show those as well briefly. As I mentioned before, SAM 6.0 is in beta, so if you're interested in seeing any of this in your environment and giving us feedback, definitely love to have you on board with that. And I think.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
I got someone on Twitter is asking, do you have a plan to load agents on servers like with Boundary to get end-to-end visibility, et cetera? It's helpful in cloud workloads.
Yes.
There you go.
So, okay.
I'll keep it short. Yes. I mean, there's obviously a ton of advantages to being agentless just from a pure management perspective, but there are use cases where, from a polling perspective, you're going to miss stuff. You can't get real time. So the answer, we're definitely looking at that. It's not as part of SAM 6.0. It's something that's a little further out.
Right.
But we're having those conversations with Joel and his team and with development about, specifically within SAM, they have the ability to have agents to get more of those real-time type metrics.
I assume all Windows agents, right? No Linux.
It's got to be able to run on.
Oh, I know. I was going to leave that one alone. But yeah, I mean, to Chris's point, definitely. I mean, you'd have to have it.
We'll have a multi-platform.
Yeah, it'd have to be
agent,
multi-platform.
I was just kidding. I'm just
I know you were kidding, but
You got to be able to track when your Surface crashes.
exactly.
There's definitely a pocket of Linux over there.
So going back to, you were talking about, if we have any comments about design changes.
They don't.
As a network engineer, when I'm having issues, one of the things I need to look at is, data points on my network interface graphs. And going through and adjusting time periods is the last thing I want to do. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cacti at all. I make my monitoring team keep Cacti there just for interface graphs on my core. Because I can boom, go into Cacti, I can click a graph, right-click it a few times to go zoom out, highlight, select, zoom back in, see what I need to see, and go move on.
Yeah, RRD is old, but it is really effective for interfaces.
It's
Just not have
really
just a single click and not have to click and drag.
the line graphs that you can barely see
graph
the
styles.
lines, stuff like that.
Yeah.
With RRD, it's right there. You can see it across a room.
that may be options for how you roll up data and graphs. I'm not sure how granular you can get with that in SolarWinds, but I've asked my monitoring team to look at that, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. But
Gotcha.
that's one thing I'd like to see, because less roll up is always better.
How long is your preference of keeping that data at more of a granular raw point?
I mean, I like to keep my data out for a year, at least in smaller chunks, at least at polling intervals.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what we're doing now, but I know it's far less than that.
Okay. Okay. No, definitely, and keep the feedback coming. So we could talk more about it at lunch too, as well. Any other thoughts or questions that I can answer? If not, I'll turn it over to Chris and Joel to talk a little bit more about some of the system stuff that's going on.
All right, so just to wrap it up, I know that storage and virtualization are sort of at the hearts and minds of a lot of you guys here based upon your profile. So I wanted to kind of give you some perspective on what we're doing there and sort of how we view those specific products that we've acquired. So we acquired Hyper 9 back at the beginning of 2011. We acquired Storage Manager like two years before that. So we have these products that are actually very deep in those specific areas, right? They're purpose-built for storage, purpose-built for virtualization. So it's been a few years. So what are our plans? What are we working on? So obviously there are distinct groups within customers where, as you get to larger customers, there will be a storage admin or there will be a virtualization admin that only cares about virtualization or storage, right? And they do want to see in the context of how their specific domain affects the rest of their environment, but they want to see it from a virtualization perspective or they want to see it from a storage perspective. And so we think those users will continue to exist and want to buy those products as a point of pain and continue to want to use those specific products. But what we're finding is that more and more, as I mentioned, kind of that convergence theme in terms of responsibility, in terms of need of visibility, we're definitely seeing even among our customer base of IT generalists that they want more of an end-to-end visibility into the application stack, which includes virtualization, which then just by definition, that is largely impacted by storage performance. So we are actually looking at how do we integrate those two products and their technology into our core platform. So how do we present it? So we already have, we have network, we have applications, we have servers, we have some basic virtualization, with Orion-based products already today, right? So it just sort of makes sense to naturally extend those with additional depth. So one of the things that we're looking at is actually integrating virtualization manager data into Orion. So within Orion-based products, specifically Server and Application Monitor and Network Performance Monitor, we provide what we call basic virtualization monitoring, right? We kind of consider that table stakes, right? What is the health of your ESX host? What is the state of the VMs that are running on those hosts? And we think that should just come with any monitoring system, whether you care about network or servers. But where it stops is effectively at the storage level, right? So we don't provide any information really about data stores or any ability to drill down into that information. And that information is provided in other products that we own, so why not integrate them, right? Seems like a natural thing to do. So we are doing that. So if you look at, and I'll just close this for a second, if you look at our virtualization tab today, or actually maybe this is actually a mock-up, so I might have to actually go and provide just the high-level view first. This is the high-level view. Okay, so within the virtualization tab today, again, you get this just as part of purchasing SAM or NPM. You get Virtualization Summary, which again is basically a big picture view of what is going on in your virtualization environment. You get VMware and Hyper-V, which are the two hypervisors that we support today, and so you can drill in on specific statistics around those specific hosts and hypervisors and the VMs that are running on them. But what we're adding and extending to this same view is storage, sprawl, a map of kind of how all that fits together, as well as reporting from Virtualization Manager. So I'll kind of drill into those various areas, and you guys tell me to stop where you see something interesting that you want to see more information on. So if I click on storage, I get to this view, and I'll close this so you can see more of it. So you can immediately see that we're providing information about the data stores as well as information around I/O on those data stores. So you can drill down into that information. You can look at data stores by free space. You can look at it based upon which VMs are consuming the most storage, which VMs are expected to deplete the disks that they've been assigned. You can look at latency. And so you can really start drilling down beyond just, hey, this VM isn't performing well. I can isolate it to it's running on this specific host, but then it just stops, right? And so we're adding that level of visibility. We're also providing visibility at a high level around sprawl, which is a common problem. We find that for most virtualization environments, they're really focused on monitoring, right? There are definitely more sophisticated people that are trying to build private clouds and things like that and are worried about capacity planning. But for the most part, it is around being able to monitor my virtualization environment and to be able to understand how I get the most out of it and where I just have things that aren't being used. So less capacity planning, but more just sort of back to the basics. And so that's what we're trying to provide here, which is, where are there VMs that are over allocated, or where are there VMs that are just sitting out there, the zombie VMs that are out there consuming resources on your ESX host or on your Hyper-V hosts. And so you can see that really quickly here. And then we're incorporating the map from Virtualization Manager, which allows you to see how all this stuff fits together. So you can immediately, click and drill down on any one of these different entities here, whether it be a host or a cluster or a data store or a VM, and get more information about that particular device. We'll also expose a lot of the the Virtualization Manager characteristics that are features that are really cool, like things like time travel. It will still be monitored from Virtualization Manager, but you'll have direct touch points from Orion in order to sort of get over to that information. So if you want to troubleshoot in more depth, you can easily get over to your Virtualization Manager installation and drill down into those details. So So that's at just a high summary level view, but then you can actually get down into things at a data store level, a data center level. You can look at it at a cluster level. You can look at specific hosts, or you can actually look at it at a VM level. And we actually have resources. So if you look at clusters for a second, we actually will look at and start correlating this information to applications. So as you drill down on data stores, you'll be able to see which specific, actually let me look at the data store so you can see this, which specific applications are actually being affected by the performance of this data store. So this is, again, starting to marry some of the information we already have today that we're already collecting in our other products with this additional information from Virtualization Manager. So, I think that one of the things that just to piggyback on some of the things that Brandon was saying, is that, the way that we innovate isn't necessarily by doing things that haven't necessarily been done before, or solving necessarily like brand new bleeding edge problems. It's about taking some of the existing problems that exist and hopefully presenting in a different way. Baselining was one that we've really struggled with because, as you can imagine, baselining for, a generalist is a concept that can be difficult to understand. And so how you do that in a way where they can actually consume that data, and as it's automatically setting thresholds for them, that it's not creating a bunch of false positive and alerts. We've seen that from plenty of other systems where they claim baselining, they claim automatic thresholding, and then you end up with just a bunch of noise, and you're better off just manually setting thresholds yourself. So solving in the right way has kind of been the focus of our investment from a product management perspective, and really just how we tackle problems in general. So if you guys have other feedback around things that you believe we should be solving, or that are mainstream enough, and it's just sort of like, why doesn't SolarWinds solve that? We're definitely interested in hearing about those problems, because we're constantly looking at what is the next thing that we go and try to commoditize, and as Denny said, try to provide that same functionality and solve that same problem, but in hopefully a better way and at a more affordable price.